Daniel Hayes never planned to stand at the farthest corner of the giant auditorium that morning. In fact, he had almost skipped the ceremony altogether. His shift had ended barely an hour earlier, and his back still ached from dragging heavy mops across 3 floors of the school building. Rainwater had blown in through a broken window, making him redo half the hallway at 3 in the morning. But none of that mattered. Today, his son Liam was graduating something Daniel had dreamed of ever since the day his boy learned to take his first steps. As he entered the hall through the side door, he kept his head down, hoping no one would notice the stain on his sleeve or the old shoes he had polished with cooking oil. Because real polish was too expensive, he moved quietly, the way people who have lived through pain learn to move, not to attract attention. Not expecting anything extraordinary, only wishing to witness the proudest moment of his life. He found a seat at the very back, where shadows softened his presence. The loud chatter from elegant families around him made him feel out of place. Businessmen in suits, mothers in designer dresses, siblings with expensive phones ready for photos. Daniel clutched the torn program sheet in his roughened hands, whispering, "I'm here, buddy. I made it." He didn't know that someone in that very hall would soon recognize something about him, something he had buried for years. And that recognition would turn the entire ceremony upside down. The giant hall filled with cheerful chaos, camera flashes, balloons, and proud laughter echoing off the walls decorated with blue and gold banners. Daniel stayed seated, hands folded together, back straight out of old habit. Even after years of civilian life, discipline lived inside his bones like a quiet ghost. His dark hair, streaked with gray, was still cropped in the sharp style he never fully abandoned. He shifted slightly, and his sleeve moved just enough to reveal the corner of an old tattoo in ink talk wrapped around an anchor. Faded but unmistakable. Suddenly, he tugged the sleeve back down. Nobody needed to see that. Nobody needed to ask questions. Especially not today. He didn't want attention. He wanted silence, anonymity, and one perfect memory. Around him, parents took selfies and hugged their graduates tightly. Daniel wondered how many of those families knew what real sacrifice looked like. How many had sold their wedding rings or skipped meals so their child's fee could be paid? How many had walked miles because the bus fare was too much? But he didn't resent them, not even a little. He was grateful to simply be part of the audience, even from far away. His eyes scanned the entrance until he finally spotted Liam, walking with his classmates in their navy blue gowns. The pride that filled Daniel's chest was so strong it almost hurt. On the stage, standing tall and decorated with medals, was Admiral Charles Pierce, the chief guest of the ceremony. His crisp white uniform shone under the stage lights, the gold insignias reflecting authority and years of service. He greeted teachers and officials before stepping to the podium. As he adjusted the microphone, his gaze drifted toward the audience. He was a man trained to notice details, faces, postures, movements. It was instinct, built from decades of military command. His attention swept the hall until his eyes paused for a brief second on a man in the far back, quiet, rigid, observant. Something about that posture hit him like a faint memory. That wasn't how civilians sat. That was how Navy men sat. But Admiral Pierce dismissed the thought as quickly as it arrived. Why would a Navy man be sitting alone in janitor boots and a worn-out jacket? The ceremony was too important to distract himself with doubt. Little did he know, the man sitting in the shadows was someone he once believed had died during a mission, so classified that even mentioning it was forbidden. While the dignitaries gave speeches Daniel could barely hear, his mind drifted back through the years, back to nights when he would rock Liam to sleep after double shifts. Back to mornings when he left home before sunrise, back to the day his life changed forever. He remembered the phone call that shattered him, the one informing him his wife had died in an accident while he was deployed overseas. That was the day he walked into his commanding officer's office and requested immediate discharge. Pierce had been there that day. He had seen Daniel's strength crumble. The Navy had lost a brilliant operative, but the world had gained a father who would give up every medal, every mission, every ounce of pride for a tiny boy who needed him more. Daniel remembered how the tattoo on his arm once symbolized power and unity. But after that day, it symbolized loss and the life he left behind. He never revealed to Liam what that tattoo meant. The world didn't need to know. Liam didn't need to grow up with the shadow of danger or legacy. Daniel just wanted him to grow up, safe, educated, and confident. So he picked up a mop instead of a rifle, a janitor's badge instead of a military tag, and he never looked back. When the principal finally called Liam's name to give his appreciation speech, Daniel froze. He hadn't known his son was selected as the student representative. Pride and fear collided inside him. He prayed Liam wouldn't feel embarrassed because of the father sitting in the cheapest clothes in the darkest corner of the hall. Liam stepped up to the mic, cleared his throat, and scanned the room. His eyes found Daniel instantly. A smile slowly spread across his face. "Today," Liam began, voice trembling slightly, "everyone here thanks someone who believed in them. I want to thank the person who believed in me more than anyone in the world." Daniel's breath caught. "My father." The audience turned their heads. Daniel lowered his eyes. "He's the man who cleans these halls. He's the man most of you walk past without noticing. But he is the strongest man I know. He worked day and night so I could stand here today." A hush fell over the hall. To me, Liam continued, he is a hero. The word echoed inside Daniel's mind like a soft explosion. Hero, a word he hadn't been called in nearly 2 decades. But it wasn't the kind of hero Liam meant. Liam didn't know the truth. At least not yet. Admiral Pierce stiffened. His sharp-trained instincts fired instantly. A janitor, father, a disciplined posture, a very specific tattoo he thought he glimpsed on the man's left arm. Memories flooded him juicy ruins in a war-torn zone. Gunfire, smoke, and one man leading a rescue extraction that saved 4 soldiers, including Pierce himself. That man had the same tattoo. Impossible. Pierce whispered under his breath. Daniel Hayes was declared missing in action years ago. Some believed he walked away from the Navy. Others believed he died. But here he was, listening to his son speak. And he was wearing a janitor's uniform. Daniel didn't notice the Admiral staring. He was too busy trying not to cry. His calloused hands trembled as he covered his mouth. A young mother sitting near him reached out and gently squeezed his arm, without knowing anything about him except the love in his eyes. When Liam finished his speech, the applause was deafening, but Daniel hardly heard it. His heart beat louder than the noise. His son had seen him, truly seen him, not as a janitor, not as someone who survived tragedy, but as the father who never gave up. Daniel whispered shakily, I'm so proud of you, Liam. He tried to stay hidden as people looked around to find the father Liam spoke about, but hiding was impossible now. His presence became a quiet spotlight. The ceremony moved to diploma distribution. Students lined up, one by one, their names echoing through the hall. Liam stood tall, chest out, eyes bright. Daniel watched with the intensity of someone watching the sunrise after years of darkness. When Liam reached the top of the stairs, Admiral Pierce extended his hand. But instead of simply congratulating him, Pierce leaned forward and asked softly, Your father, is he Daniel Hayes? Liam blinked in surprise. Yes, sir. The Admiral stepped back as if hit by a wave. His eyes darted to the back row, searching, confirming. A cold rush went through him. He remembered the day he last saw Daniel dust covering his uniform. Blood on his hands, carrying an injured soldier over his shoulder. He remembered the explosion that swallowed the building behind them. After that, no one ever saw Daniel again. Until now. Liam walked off the stage, but Admiral Pierce didn't call the next name immediately. He stood frozen, mind racing, heart pounding. Teachers glanced at each other, wondering why the ceremony had paused. But Pierce wasn't thinking about the present, he was thinking about the man who saved his life. He knew he had to speak to him. He owed him far more than a handshake or a salute. The entire Navy owed him. Pierce turned again to the back row. This time, Daniel sensed the gaze. Their eyes met. Daniel stiffened. Time froze. For the first time in many years, he felt seen not as a janitor, but as the man he once was. Pierce almost whispered his name, barely realizing his lips moved. Hayes. Daniel swallowed hard and looked away. He didn't want this. He didn't want attention or recognition. He didn't want his past dragging his son into a world he escaped. His heart hammered painfully in his chest. Memories of missions, gunfire, lost comrades, he had locked those away. The tattoo on his arm felt like it burned under his sleeve. But fate wasn't going to let him hide anymore. Liam approached Daniel with his diploma, eyes shining with love. Dad, did you see? Did you hear me? I meant every word. Daniel forced a smile and nodded. You were perfect, son, he whispered. But his voice cracked in fear of what was coming next. The steps grew louder. Admiral Pierce was walking Admiral Pierce took slow, purposeful steps down the aisle, each one echoing like the heavy footfalls of the past coming back to life. Daniel felt his breath shorten. His instincts, long buried beneath years of silence and mops and night shifts, awakened sharply. Muscle memory stiffened his spine. His eyes lowered the way they once did before a commanding officer, though he was no longer that man. Liam, noticing the tension in his father's jaw, frowned in confusion. Parents around them stepped aside, their conversations falling silent as the Admiral approached. Some wondered if Daniel had done something wrong. Others simply stared because it wasn't every day that a Navy Admiral walked straight toward a man wearing a faded janitor uniform. Daniel closed his eyes briefly, gripping the arms of his chair. He didn't want this confrontation. He didn't want his past bleeding into the present. He had lived quietly for years, raising his son, sacrificing everything, surviving not by force but by love. But fate wasn't asking for permission today. The moment the Admiral stopped in front of him, the air in the hall tightened like a drawn bowstring. Pierce inhaled deeply before speaking. Daniel Hayes, he said, voice soft, yet carrying the weight of recognition, grief, and gratitude all at once. Daniel opened his eyes and stood slowly. He didn't confirm or deny. He simply met the Admiral's gaze. That alone was enough. Pierce's throat tightened. He had seen those eyes before, once staring through dust and smoke while holding a fallen comrade, once reflecting the fire of determination during a mission no one survived except those Daniel dragged out with his bare hands. Liam looked between them, shocked. He had never heard his dad be addressed like that. You're alive, Pierce whispered, as if saying it made the miracle real. Daniel gave a faint, tired smile. Depends on the day. he muttered. The Admiral's lips parted with a breath that carried years of regret. "We looked for you," he said. "We never stopped. They told us you were gone." Daniel lowered his eyes. "I was," he said quietly. "At least the man you remember." Asterisk students and families watched the scene as if time had paused. Some whispered, recognizing the tension. Others felt chills without knowing why. Liam touched his father's arm gently. "Dad, what is he talking about?" Daniel swallowed hard. He had dreaded this moment for years. "Later, son," he whispered. "I'll tell you everything later." But the Admiral wouldn't wait. "He saved us," Pierce said, turning slightly to the audience, though still speaking to Liam. "Your father saved 4 men on a mission where we were outnumbered, outgunned, and left for dead. He carried one of us on his back after a building collapsed. He refused to leave anyone behind." The hall went silent. Daniel's heart squeezed painfully. He didn't want applause. He didn't want admiration. He wanted peace. But the truth was unraveling whether he liked it or not. Asterisk Daniel raised a hand gently. "Sir, please." Pierce stopped instantly. Daniel looked around at the staring faces, feeling exposed. "That was a lifetime ago," he said, voice rough. "I'm not that man anymore. I'm just a father." Pierce's expression softened with deep respect. "That," he replied, "is the greatest mission any man can take on." Daniel's eyes glistened. He wasn't used to hearing praise, certainly not the kind that struck past the armor he'd built around his heart. Liam stepped closer. "Dad, why didn't you ever tell me?" Daniel looked at him with a tremble in his lips. "Because I didn't want you to grow up with my ghosts." Liam blinked rapidly, tears filling his eyes. "But Dad, that's not a ghost. That's honor." Asterisk the Admiral suddenly stood straight and saluted. Not a casual gesture, not a courtesy, but a full, formal military salute, the kind reserved for the highest honor, the deepest respect. Gasps filled the room. Parents stood, students froze, teachers stared as if witnessing something holy. Daniel's breath caught. His hands shook. For nearly 20 years he had been invisible. A man cleaning floors, others walked across without noticing. A man carrying burdens no one saw. Now, a Navy admiral, the very man whose life he saved, was saluting him publicly. Daniel hesitated, then slowly raised his hand and returned the salute. Not for pride, not for the past, but because respect deserved acknowledgement, and because some bonds never die. The hall erupted. Applause thundered. Some people stood. Others wiped their eyes. Liam stared at his father as if seeing him for the first time. Asterisk Pierce lowered his hand and spoke firmly. "The Navy never got to honor you," he said. "We never got the chance to thank you. We never got to acknowledge your sacrifice." Daniel shook his head lightly. "I don't need medals," he replied. "I don't need ceremonies. My son is my reward." Liam grabbed his father's arm. "Dad," but Pierce continued, "then let us honor him," he said, nodding toward Liam. "Let us give him the opportunities you were denied because you chose to raise him alone." Daniel's breath hitched. "What do you mean?" Admiral Pierce reached into his coat and pulled out a sealed envelope. He handed it to Liam. "Full scholarship," he announced. "Any field, any academy, any military or civilian program he chooses. Paid entirely by the U.S. Navy." The hall broke into whispers. Liam stared in disbelief. Daniel's knees almost buckled. Years of working double shifts, nights with no sleep, weeks of skipped meals, all erased by a single moment of opportunity. Asterisk Liam hugged the Admiral impulsively, unable to contain his emotions. Pierce smiled and patted his back. "Your father saved my life," he said softly. "This is the least we can do." Daniel covered his face with his hands, forcing back tears he hadn't allowed himself in decades. He felt Liam grab him suddenly, a tight, trembling embrace that carried gratitude, pride, love, and revelations all at once. "Dad," Liam whispered, "I want to be like you." Daniel shook his head. "No, son, be better than me." Liam pulled back. "I don't think that's possible." Daniel let out a broken laugh. "Trust me, kid, it is." The Admiral placed a hand on Daniel's shoulder. "You deserve more than this," he said. "You deserve recognition, pension, rank, restoration." Daniel cut him off gently. "Sir, I walked away from that world. My life is here now. My son is my mission." Pierce nodded, eyes heavy with understanding. "Then at least allow us to stand by you from now on. You're not alone anymore." Asterisk the ceremony slowly resumed, but the atmosphere had completely changed. People approached Daniel, shaking his hand, thanking him, treating him with a respect he hadn't felt in years. Some apologized for never noticing him before. Others said Liam's speech had inspired them. Daniel accepted it all humbly, but his mind felt numb, overwhelmed by the weight of resurfaced memories and the unexpected flood of honor. Liam remained beside him the entire time, holding the scholarship envelope as if it were made of gold. When the crowd finally dispersed and the hall emptied, Daniel and Liam walked outside together into the fresh afternoon air. For the first time in years, Daniel didn't feel small. He didn't feel invisible. He felt seen truly, deeply seen. Asterisk they reached the parking lot, and Daniel leaned against the railing, exhausted but peaceful. Liam stood in front of him. "Dad," he said quietly, "I know you left that life, but I want to hear about it someday. All of it. Daniel nodded slowly. Whenever you're ready, I'll tell you. Liam placed the envelope in his father's hand. This happened because of you, he said. You gave up your dreams, so I could have mine. Daniel shook his head softly. No, this happened because you worked hard. You earned your place. Liam smiled. But you built the road. Daniel finally allowed a tear to slip down his cheek. I just wanted you to have a future, he whispered. Liam hugged him again. Now I have one because of who you are. 20. As they walked toward the bus stop together, the sun dipped low, painting the sky in warm gold. Daniel felt lighter than he had in years. For so long, he had carried the belief that his past was something to hide, something that might overshadow his son's future. But today proved something else entirely. Love changes the meaning of sacrifice. Pain becomes purpose. Silence becomes strength. And hidden heroes eventually find their way into the light, even when they never asked for it. Daniel looked at Liam tall, confident, full of hope, and whispered, your mom would be proud. Liam squeezed his hand. Dad, she'd be proud of you too. Daniel didn't reply. He just walked forward, shoulders no longer bent but lifted. Not as a soldier, not as a janitor, but as a father whose legacy lived not in medals, but in the son who now walked beside him, carrying the future he had fought so hard to protect. Asterisk.